Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I make the time 3 p.m. It is Tuesday, May the 8th, 2018, the council meeting, our first council meeting for May. I'd like to remind everyone again that our meetings are web streamed and televised, and my cell phone is on silence mode, so I'm going to be okay. Our camera volunteer today again is Judy Ann McCauley. Thank you, Judy Ann. I just want to welcome everybody here. David from Fort Dover Maple Leaf, council members, certainly staff. I'm going to push right ahead with everything in the agenda except the public meeting application. There's one to deal with. I believe there's one, if I recall, yes, which we are scheduled for 5 o'clock. So hopefully we can get through most of the business and have a little break and then deal at 5 o'clock with the one application. Approval of the agenda. There are no changes that I'm aware of to the agenda this evening. Anything there from anyone? I have a motion from Geisens and seconded by Wells that the agenda be approved as presented. Any discussion on that resolution? If not, those in favor? We will proceed with the agenda as printed on your blue sheet. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare? I hear none. I'm not sure. I would imagine Councillor Height will be joining us. I haven't heard.
I just received an email. He says he won't be available today.
We just heard from the clerk that he just got notified by email that he will not be with us this evening on personal business. So thank you for that. I had not heard anything. So item number 5 is the adoption corrections of our April the 24th meeting. They're printed on page 5, and also we had distributed under separate cover our April 24th closed session minutes as well. Is there anything to bring to my attention from page 5 to 18? Very well written. I read every line and I could not find an error that I was aware of. I will declare those adopted as they are printed. Let's go to communications, please. Before us are 3 communications requesting us for permission to do certain things. The first communication is from Jen Vandevelde. This is the Fall Fest Beer Tent and Fireworks, the LCBO Special Occasion Permit Notice to the municipality, which you'll find on page 19. I look for direction on this item. Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Mayor, I was shocked when I read this on page 19 that there's a refusal for this event. This is an event sponsored by a number of volunteers from across the county. They give us their gift of time and energy for this. It happened last year as well, and I'm surprised that there's no beer tent recommended. So I will actually move a recommendation to permit this event to take place with the Fall Fest Beer Tent Fireworks.
Do I have a second to Councillor Geisens? Columbus has moved, and Geisens has seconded that the request from Jen Vandevelde for an LCBO special occasion permit be approved pending receipts of all other required approvals. Any discussion? Councillor Black, please.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I too was rather surprised when I saw, I guess there's 2 of them here that are recommended for refusal, and I don't know if I've seen that before. I even made a note on my iPad here in big red letters, why the refusal. I guess, would that be a question through you to the clerk? Have they not come forward before and received approval for this license? So, like, I'm not really understanding why the refusal.
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are significantly different reasons, I think, for each one for the refusal recommendation, so they're not the same, if that assists. I could, the first one, we just do a circulation to staff on them, and so the responses we got back for both are different. The first one is more of a planning issue with the actual property where it's supposed to be on. So I think the first one Mr. Baird could probably speak to, and the second one I could speak to.
Okay, so is this putting Norfolk County at any type of risk by approving this? That's what I'm worried about. I'm not seeing what the problem is.
Mr. Baird, can you shed some light, please?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I'll try to shed some light on it. As Councillor Columbus suggested, this has happened in some shape or form over a number of years. We know Harvest Fest morphed into Fall Fest a few years ago, and it's now sort of moving on in new directions. This was originally just dealt off with, it was all part of Fall Fest, and approvals were just granted in principle. In this particular case, it went through our special event process, at which points it gets broader circulation, and I think there were a fresh set of eyes that looked at that, and the location in which they're going to do it is, in fact, it's industrial land that is currently used as a soccer park, and I think just from a policy perspective, the use of that for the special event could not be supported. Okay. So that's basically the recommendation.
Okay.
Notwithstanding, this council has the opportunity to recommend otherwise.
Okay, I understand now. I don't have any problem with the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wells, please.
Mayor, I don't know whether we're dealing with the two together or separately, because I prefer that they be separated.
We're just dealing with the
Thank you.
one from
All right.
Van de
And I'll speak
Velde
to the other one
and the
later.
Delhi soccer pitch area, McLaughlin's area. Councillor Columbus, please.
Mr. Mayor, I thought the end of that motion prepared by the clerk read other approvals, and I'm just wondering, what are those other approvals? Like, in speaking with Mr. Baird, there's some thought that they'd have to get rezoned. Like, that could take ages and cost some big bucks if it requires a rezoning, because it is owned by E&E McLaughlin, the soccer fields. We have an agreement with them to rent them or something of that sort. So this would actually tear the heart out of volunteers if they've got to go through a rezoning process.
Through the mayor, I totally agree with Councillor Columbus. There's a lot of history here in the former township of Delhi. I'm very much familiar with it, and in the perfect world, everything would occur on appropriately zoned lands, including special events or beer tents and festivals, etc. But in this case, there is the recommendation that if they wanted to do this on a regular basis, it would be recommended. No different than a music festival that if it's happened in an area where it's it's perhaps an agricultural zone. If they want to do that on a regular basis, it would be nice to have a site-specific provision added. I'm thinking of a few of them along the lakeshore over the years where we've done that. But again, notwithstanding that, if they were to consider coming in to have that process gone through, I know staff would be certainly satisfied the event could continue. But everything has come up rather close here at this point.
So who would pay for the applications and all that, being they're just using the facility? Is it the county would pay for the rezoning?
Through the mayor, I think that might be an interesting discussion that staff could certainly take away. I know the property is being used. I believe it's being cut and maintained by our parks staff. So I think there's in the spirit of goodwill, there may be an opportunity for us to perhaps take that leadership and look at if the Fall Fest group is looking to use this location moving forward, then maybe we could do that in the off season in the future, get that so that everything happens legally the way it should. We're held to the same standard as we hold others.
So what can we do to ensure that this happens by September the 7th and 8th? Because it takes a month if it doesn't happen, and you've got to be in the planning stages and start marketing your event.
What I might suggest to help council with this decision is you have every opportunity, as you've just done, you're recommending approval. That's certainly your privilege. If that passes, perhaps we can take that under advisement, and when we communicate back to this organizing group, we could suggest that when we use this, if they plan to use this site in the future, that staff would work with them to get the necessary approvals in place over the upcoming year.
But for this year, 2018, it would be permitted.
This council could, if they support your resolution as stated.
Okay, that's why I worded my motion the way it is. I didn't put with approvals with it, Andy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, this is a process that's going through they're going through the special events process. So there is no direct requirement for SOP issuance for zoning to be correct. There's lots of people that have SOP events in their backyards. Zoning is something that we see introduced when this becomes a regular occurrence. So it's the frequency of the event that is determining the zoning, not the SOP. So the reason for the other required approvals is to make sure things like the tents, the fireworks, the insurance are in place. If council approves it, you're saying you don't have an issue with the zoning for this one event that's being requested right here.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Oliver?
Very quickly, Mr. Mayor, since we're even conceivably talking about asking for a rezoning for 2019 and beyond, I find it's interesting. It's being used and has been for several years as a recreational soccer field. Does it have the appropriate zoning on it to allow that use already as a special provision?
Mr. Mayor, the short answer to that is no, they do not.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can't understand why there would be any issue relative to this event one weekend when we allow them to use it for a non-conforming use all summer long as a soccer field. So if we're going to do it, we better rezone it to allow for both in 2019.
Good point. Thank you.
Pretty clever.
Any other discussion? The resolution is to approve this request. Those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. On to page 21. This is also a temporary license extension request from the Delhi District German Home. It's been moved by Councillor Columbus and seconded by Councillor Geisens at the request of the Delhi District German Hall Limited for an LCBO temporary license extension be approved pending receipt of all other required approvals. Discussion on this resolution? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And our last one is on page 23, a request from Louis DeBono of Angelo's of Port Dover for a special occasion permit. Councillor Wells, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I must truthfully say I was very much surprised with this recommendation when I read this report on weekend. And the reason I was surprised is that this event has been going on in the same location for at least 20 years and probably longer than that. This is where the event started, Friday the 13th. And I know things change, however, 1982. And so I called Mr. DeBono today to find out whether he had been informed of this decision not to recommend approval, to which he said no, and he was just as much surprised as I was. So, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, and I did inform Mr. Griselle that I'd be raising this at council this evening, and I'm sure he has an answer as to why this recommendation. So I will now sit down.
Thank you. Mr. Griselle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this one is an interesting one. The business itself has closed down, and part of the challenge that we had that this was approved in April. So it's the previous Friday, the 13th, it was approved. And the AGCO, being the licensing body, we aren't the licensing body, we just issue a letter of support, had a very large concern with the fact that we issued. I think that they would like to see this, if it's going to be run as a bar, that it be a fully licensed establishment and not be coming forward for special occasion permit. So within their classification, it doesn't fit, but I can tell you a bunch of staff in the health unit and fire have worked with Mr. DeBono, so the municipality's concerns aren't as great as the AGCO's.
Well, thank you very much for that, and I'm very reassured by your comments, and I thank you. And the reason that it may be closed, Mr. Mayor, is unfortunately partly to do with Norfolk County. For the last 2 years, as you know, we have been redoing Main Street, and it has definitely affected the business. What business they did have went elsewhere, and now it's very difficult to get back a business, and this is only another nail in the coffin. So if at all possible, I would recommend that we allow this to go forth.
Councillor Wells, would you like to move that we
Yes.
approve this?
I would.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Oliver? Wells has moved. Oliver seconded that the request from Louis Angelo DeBono of Angelo's of Port Dover for special occasion permit be approved pending receipt of all other required approvals. Discussion. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andy, any idea of what the repercussions would be from the Alcohol and Gaming Commission with approval?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they're the issuance body, so if they do have an issue themselves, they can make their own decision and pursue it themselves.
Thank you.
So you get the final word. Other discussion? Those in favor? It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reports of committees, page 25, council and committee minutes of May the 1st are printed there, 2018. It has been moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Oliver that the minutes of the council and committee meeting of May the 1st, 2018 be approved as presented. Is there anything, discussion on that motion or the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. On page 35, Councillor Wells has moved and Councillor Oliver seconded that the minutes of the Health and Social Services Advisory Committee minutes of March 15th, 2018 be received as information. Any discussion on this motion? Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, one thing did catch my eye in a positive way, and I'm going to direct this to Marlene Miranda if she doesn't mind, but on page 4 of our agenda, page 6 of the minutes, under other business, the item came up about the City School Mobile Project, which I thought was kind of interesting through Mohawk College, I believe. So if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, perhaps you would give us just a thumbnail sketch of what that's potentially going to entail.
So through the chair to Councillor Oliver, this was a request from Haldeman. Councillor Corbett had asked us if we would send referrals to the program. And in essence, what the program is an initiative to have a training trailer placed in Dunnville for introductory trades training. So they were really wanting us to be a partner in that and to send referrals to them so that we could have referrals for the training that's going to be made available in the Dunnville area specifically.
So in other words, these might potentially be clients of ours through our social housing program or through other programs. And these folks, if they could get to the location, would there be a certificate available as a result of the training, or?
So through the chair to Councillor Oliver, I'm not sure of those specifics, but we would be making referrals and we would be assisting with transportation for any of our participants that would be interested in partaking in any of the trades training.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else? Not, those in favor of receiving his information, it's carried. On to page 43, the minutes of the Delhi Tobacco Museum and Culture Advisory Committee are printed there. The meeting from Monday, April the 16th, moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Geisens at the minutes of the Delhi Tobacco Museum and Cultural Advisory Committee minutes and the Curator's Report of April 16th, 2018 be received as information. Discussion, Councillor Wells.
On reading the minutes, I was very pleased to see that they picked up 2 new volunteers. You know, we are so fortunate in Norfolk County that people continue to volunteer. You keep thinking that maybe we'll run out of volunteers, but every once in a while you get a shot in the arm when you start reading that we get new volunteers. And congratulations.
Well said. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? It's carried to receive as information. On to page 47. It has been moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Oliver that the Norfolk Heritage Committee minutes of March 26, 2018 be received as information. Discussion here on these minutes. Those in favor? Carried. Do we do the bylaws now? I know the one from planning is on there, isn't it? So we'll leave it? Yeah. Yeah, we'll just leave the bylaws until right after the public meeting. There's one in there that's on the public meeting, so we'll just leave those. It's just a motion, so it would not take long. I would like to move on to page 85, if you will. This is under motions, and Councillor Black has a motion on road repair for us to consider. I'm just going to set that up there. I'm going to, I do have a mover and seconder, and Councillor Black, would you like to read this for us? You or the clerk? You would be fine. It has been moved by Councillor Black and seconded by Councillor Oliver, so if you would like to continue from there, we'll go through it, please.
All right, thank you, Mayor Luke. And the motion does read, whereas urban roads currently consist of 249.9 kilometers of the total county roads of 2,115.9 kilometers, and received that information from the county's GIS. It's made up of Simcoe 104.13, Dover 62.69, Delhi 40.06, Waterford 29.47, Port Rowan 13.55. Whereas the number of complaints from the public are increasing regarding the deterioration of county roads, whereas it is a fact that county roads are beyond the current financial allocations to maintain them, whereas it is a fact that our road reserves are in the red and have been for some time now, whereas we continue to get further behind in keeping up to date with our road needs study, whereas prior to amalgamation there existed a 2-tier roads program between the region and lower level municipality. Whereas our urban roads program can be designed to maximize our road budgetary allocations by creating a more efficient and effective use of the tax dollars in order to increase the number of roads being repaired. Whereas
I would say that the motion is now on the floor, and
Well, no,
you
it
certainly can speak to it.
it's not done yet.
Pardon?
It's not done yet.
Well, what am I missing here? Oh,
Yeah,
my goodness.
they put that
There's
line in
page
there in the
2.
wrong
My
spot.
apologies.
Yeah, they got the wrong spot for the.
Somebody here is long-winded. Listen, my apologies. Continue.
Okay, sorry, it is a long preamble, but it really describes the intent. Whereas our current urban road repair program consists of mostly completing a full top-to-bottom construction, whereas in some situations, the condition of the underground services are in good or reasonable condition, but the road surface is falling apart. Therefore, be it resolved that Council direct staff to explore alternative methods to repair our urban roads in order to stretch those urban dollar allocations further to complete more kilometers of repair, and further that a better method be developed to identify and prioritize repairs, which includes road counts. And further, that staff include the timelines when to return this report to council. And that's it. That's the end of it.
That certainly now puts it on the floor for discussion. My apologies again for interrupting you.
Could I speak to it?
You may speak to this.
Well, I think,
Please.
Mr. Mayor, it's I think, self-evident from what I read, and just looking at trying, alternate methods of stretching the tax dollars. It's difficult. Yes, we could, as a council, say, okay, we're going to put another $5 million or $10 million to our roads. But is that realistic? It probably isn't, because we also have to look at trying to keep our taxes down. So that's always the problem. So what other ways can you look at doing more with the same amount? It's try and stretch it out, being more creative. And I did have General Manager of Public Works approach me and said that she was on site and was probably thinking the same as maybe myself a little while back, and came up with the idea herself. So it seems that we are on site. So that's what the motion is all about.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, then Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was certainly happy to second this motion in order to get it on the floor and have some debate. I guess my only concern at this stage with what Councillor Black is proposing is his definition of urban roads. He's only listed the 5 large urban centers, and yet some of our large hamlets, and I'm thinking of Victoria or Cortland in particular, that probably have hundreds of residents, hundreds of homes, and urban streets in that sense. So I'm not sure that it's entirely fair to, if the intent was just to limit it to those 5 urban centers. Now, what I understand that, and perhaps it's in those urban centers where you've got services underneath the road. That's all you're talking about, is it, Councillor?
You can
So
respond.
that's my
You can
question
respond.
at
That's a
this
good
point,
point.
Mr. Mayor.
This is a very good point. Councillor Black certainly can
Just
respond.
to maybe, I thought maybe it was clear in my motion, that is the intent. It's the urban roads because of the infrastructure underneath. So in some cases, you have water and sewer mains that are still in good shape, but the road surface isn't. So it used to be, prior to amalgamation, where the region would do their roads top to bottom, meaning the infrastructure underneath plus the road surface. And then the local municipalities had their own budgets for doing the roads, and they were mostly surface treatment of some sort, whatever it may be. So that disappeared upon amalgamation, and it was all rolled into one, and the new method was we're going to do the urban roads only when we need the top to bottom situation. So it left some of the roads over time to deteriorate. So it's not talking about the other areas, and I'm not talking about adding more dollars. All I'm doing is talking about stretching the dollars.
Just before I go to Councillor Columbus, Lee, do you want to respond to that specific point, please?
Through the mayor to council, the larger, more typical of a rural road that are through a lot of our hamlets are actually funded through a different program. So with respect to the urban road repair program, that would not include the roads that you're referring to, Councillor Oliver, and we already have those funded through a different mechanism. And so the way this motion is written, it wouldn't affect that consideration.
Councillor Columbus, Geisens, and Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Ms. Robinson. For every $1 million expended on major capital infrastructure, like that's the whole thing, water, sewer, waste, storm sewers, what percentage would be allocated towards like a shave and peel? Would it be 20%, 80% of it's underground?
Through the mayor to council, it's hard to give an exact number because depending on the depth of the water main, the depth of the sanitary sewer, the complicated nature of it, how much is that? But give or take, probably about 60%, 60 to 70% goes towards the road, and the other 30 to 40% goes towards the underground services. Sorry, and we consider the storm sewers to be part of the road, because the storm sewers are actually there to drain the road itself. So the underground services that are funded through the levy, or sorry, through the rate budget, are just the water and the wastewater. And we do consider storm sewers to be part of the road itself. So when we break out the money, that's how it works out.
With Councillor Black's motion, we wouldn't be, if we were repairing the road surface, we wouldn't be tearing up the storm sewer.
That is correct. We would, with this resolution, we would not be doing the storm sewer, but I was just for information purposes letting you know that when I was giving you those percentages, it wasn't, the storm sewers are included in the roads portion of those percentages as opposed to the underground infrastructure.
Thank you.
Councillor Geisens, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a little bit of a problem here, and for some reason or other, I guess we don't count in Cortland because we do have water. We don't have a sewer. It would be nice if we could. The other thing that's happening in the Cortland area and the industrial park and everything like that, I think that we also have to look at all of it, not just part of the big Simcoes and Delhai's and Dover and all the others. And I'm sure that people in Langton would want their roads and everything. I know it's a hamlet, and but I think it's important that they have the same, I guess, that you're going to get from all the others. So theoretically, for me, I think that we need to look at that because we're going to get a lot of. My understanding is that there's going to be growth again on somewhere in the Cortland area. So I hope that that council will look at this and count at least Cortland.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Just on the same issue, kind of a comment and maybe a request, but, you know, I guess it was last year, and I could maybe ask our treasurer, we put aside, oil was about $50 a barrel, now it's heading up to $70 a barrel now. It was just yesterday, I believe. But we expanded our surface treatment program by, what, 250,000, James?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brunton, it was 200,000, and the other 50,000 was towards the recreational project.
Okay. Do you know what we got for that extra 200,000? How many kilometers of surface treatment by chance? Can anybody answer that question?
Through the mayor to council, we have not issued the tender yet. We're in the process of putting it together, and so we'll be able to advise after that how many kilometers we're going to get.
Oh, I thought this was last year. It was a tender for last summer. We didn't change the budget this year unless we left it the same for surface treatment. We added it in last year.
If I may, we've got our results in last fall on the interest or the earnings from legacy. It was actually James, again, I'm thinking it certainly was prior to the 2018 budget that we discussed the 50,000. Yeah, it was from the 2017. You are quite right. It was from the 2017 where we had a 2.9 million and we topped the reserves, the contingency reserve, and we had an extra 250. So,
and we put, James,
200,000 in the road resurface and
yeah, so
50,000 for a consultant for the recreation.
So I
Lee,
see,
do you wish to, can you shed any light on? I got
Sure.
you're right, Councillor Brown.
Through the mayor to council, I don't know the number of additional kilometers. That wasn't how we calculated it, but we can certainly sit down and do that calculation if you would like. It made a significant impact.
I'm sure it would.
It was, we did almost a third more. I can tell you that in terms of last year, we I believe we converted approximately 10 kilometers of gravel road over to tar and chip surface.
Right.
That was far better than we had been doing in previous years. But in addition to that, we also did those. I can figure out how many kilometers, but I know it was at least a third more than we had done the previous year.
Who had the gravel roads? You know, who's still got gravel roads?
There is one or two gravel roads left in the east. There is one or two left in central, and the rest of them are all in the west. By the end of the 2018 year, the only gravel roads left will be in the west. We're going to finish up the east and central this year.
So my good colleagues in the west, as Councillor, if they have gravel roads, they may have got resurfaced, is all I'm saying.
Through the mayor to council, last year there were certainly more roads resurfaced in the west than there had been the year before. And this year there will, again, with the way council had structured the budget this year, we'll have even more roads that we will undertake in the west, converting them from gravel roads to surface treated roads.
Thank you. Well, I guess my point, and to go along with Councillor Black's recommendation, and I have also spoken with Lee about, we don't have any gravel roads that I'm aware of left in Simcoe, the old Ward 5, if you want to call it that. Ours are all pretty much hardtop, and there are the odd surface treated or rurals, but my point is, oil's on the increase, and if it goes back to $150 a barrel, we aren't going to have much in terms of hot mixing going on. It's going to be getting more expensive. So I like how Lee, I think you mentioned that you're looking at possibly a lot more paving and less underground. And, you know, I guess my own observation is it says 2,000 kilometers, but lean kilometers is probably over 4,000. Is that safe to say?
Through the chairman to council, yes. There's we have about 40, somewhere between 41 and 4,200 lane kilometers.
And if you look at, you don't just look at it because it's in Simcoe versus, I mean, you got to look at the traffic volumes on those roads too. Like if there's a lot of traffic, like on Norfolk Street North, and there's a memo in here coming up later, unfortunately, those roads, they have thousands of vehicles on those in a day. So to me, I put my faith in the county engineer that she's going to look at those traffic counts where things are needed, not just a case of make sure someone is in each reward. I hope in the future too that if it ain't broke underground, let's not worry about fixing it. Let's get the surface done, and if it breaks, we'll fix it later. That's my, I look at Colburn Street, and in all respect, Lee, I know you want to do the underground there, but let's look at getting it paved, and if this, I don't know how old the sewers are, if you've had tele through them, let's get some of this surface work done, and I appreciate your ideas that you're coming forth with, so thank you.
Councillor Black?
Just once again, just in response to Councillor Geisens, and I get the sense that he feels that what I'm trying to do is get more tax dollars allocated to Simcoe or the other urban areas, and that is not my intent. My intent is to look at taking existing dollars, not expanding those tax dollars, but stretching those tax dollars so we get more road surface done. So, and I'm not opposed to looking at creating more efficiencies and making the roads in the rural areas and the hamlets done more effectively. If there's a method that we can stretch those dollars as well, I'm in favor of it. Like, why wouldn't anybody be in favor of taking your existing tax dollars and making them go further for the taxpayer? My motion is because I'm representing the people in Simcoe and this urban area. It's mostly urban. And I get a lot, I'm getting more and more calls, I'm sure Doug is, about the conditions of those roads. So rather than keep complaining and coming back and hoping that my fellow colleagues will support more road work in Simcoe, no, that's not my approach. My approach is to take what we have and stretch it further.
Councillor Black, would you consider putting the word Cortland under the word Port Rowan in the whereas? Because that's the only other place I know of where there is water under the roads. I'm just throwing that out so that...
Lee's got her hand
Lee?
up.
Sorry, I didn't see it.
Through the mayor to council, ironically, prior to this resolution coming forward, I'd actually spoken with staff to talk about the 2019 budgets, et cetera. And one of the instructions that I had actually given to staff, not really focusing on urban versus rural or hamlets or services, was to actually look at if we can take a hiatus from doing a full road reconstruction and use all of that money and look at where we have the opportunity in Norfolk County, regardless of whether it's in a rural area, urban area, any of those places, where our underground infrastructure, be it the ditching, the roadbed, any of those sorts of things, not located to that, is in good condition, but the wearing surface of the asphalt is done. If we can spend and have a big couple, about a year blitz or maybe a 2-year blitz to redo a lot of the surface of the roads, it's going to buy us 15, 20, 30 years with a lot of infrastructure and protect it. So those were the instructions that staff were given when carrying out to start working on the 2019 budget. And my instructions were not urban versus rural or undergrounds. It was, what is the condition of the driving surface of the road, and can we spend a little bit of money now to make that road last us a lot longer? We obviously don't want to spend money on a road if the infrastructure is going to fall apart underneath in 2 years. That's not an effective use of our money. But if we take a couple of years off and really focus and do a big, I'm going to call it a blitz across the municipality, and get a lot of these roads that are 20, 30 years old, where the road bed's in good condition, it's just the driving surface that's causing us some problems, and do some resurfacing work. We will protect our road bases, we'll protect the infrastructure that we have in the ground, and at the end of the day, it's going to be a much better use of our money. I liken it to a bridge project. If I spend $40,000 for the next 3 years on this bridge and just do a little bit of touch-up work, I'm going to gain another 40 years out of that bridge. If I don't do that, $40,000 worth of work on the bridge, the water is going to get in there, and I'm going to have to do an entire bridge deck replacement for $1.5 million. That's not the best use of our money. We're better off to spend a little bit of money to do a little bit of work on it to protect what we already have invested in there. That was the instructions to staff. We weren't looking at urban versus rural. We were simply looking at our wearing surfaces where we have good infrastructure, be it the roadbed or water mains and sanitary sewers underneath. Where can we do some work on our driving surfaces to preserve the infrastructure we already have in the ground? That would address the Cortland, that addresses the hamlets, all of the areas that aren't fully serviced either. That was the intention of what staff were intending to implement and bring forward as part of the 2019 budget for council's consideration.
So just, Mr. Mayor, just how much different is my motion than what you just said? Is there a big difference? Like, can they come together somehow?
Through the mayor to council, the way the resolution that, or the motion that's been put forward is, it specifies the urban road repair program. The instructions that I was given to staff were looking at Norfolk County roads, period. If we have good infrastructure underneath the ground, but the driving surface is awful, we should be looking at rehabbing that right now. Okay. We don't have sufficient funds in the budget to be able to do that. One of the ways that we can do that is to not do some of our full depth reconstructions where we're putting in all kinds of new things. It gives us a considerable amount of money that we can invest into just doing the resurfacing. Well, and the difference is that we looked at Norfolk County roads as a whole as opposed to specifying it was with respect to urban, because we have a lot of roads that may not be in an urban area, but they have really great road bases. But if we don't get an opportunity to fix the surface, the water is going to get into the basin. It's going to destroy the investment that we have, and we want to protect that, whether it's in a hamlet, whether it's in an urban area, or whether it's completely rural.
Well, if council would support the direction that our general manager has stated, I'd be happy to exchange this for that. Does that complicate things?
Well,
to make the rest, if that would make the rest of council, supportive of this direction to stretch our dollars, I'm willing to compromise on that.
Councillor Black, I'm not sure that your resolution contradicts that. No. Most of this that's before me is in the whereas, and that really is the background. And I think if you read what you have in the therefore, I think that it's in line with what Leah's saying, but I'll let her respond to that if she feels it is or is not.
Through the mayor to council, I would concur with Mayor Luke that most of the whereas is just background, it's just background information. I think that if we changed the therefore be it resolved, that council directs staff to explore alternative methods to repair, and I would just say our roads, in order to stretch those dollar allocations further to complete more kilometers of repair. That's ultimately what staff are trying to do. We're exploring different ways of doing that. If you removed the words urban from the be hereby resolved, that would absolutely give staff the full flexibility to look
Okay.
at all of our roads in Norfolk County.
Let's
You
take
want to
the
take the word
word
urban out?
out of my motion.
Councillor
if the
Oliver, you
seconder
second
would
it?
support
Would you
that.
okay with that? I have deleted that. Thank you. Councillor Geisens is next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What about the first paragraph when we were talking and listening to what Lee Robinson has said? Do we really need to have all of the Simcoe, Dover, Delhi, Waterford, and Port Rowan? We don't need Cortland then either, too, because what Lee is telling us is that's what they're going to do. So I would prefer if we take that top one out, and I don't know whether I can make a motion to do that or whether Councillor Black would pull it up.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor, so a motion is not in order. Amendments are.
Okay, well, I'll make that amendment then, if I would, that we take off the first paragraph.
The first whereas,
Whereas
That's in
urban
order.
roads currently exist of 249,
yeah,
that one?
exactly.
If I can get a seconder, I don't know whether we can or not, but I want to know.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment? I'm looking for a seconder. Seconder? Well, we're not going to discuss it until I get a seconder. Otherwise, there's no sense discussing a possible amendment if there is no amendment. Councillor Columbus? Okay, now, I'll get to you in a moment. Just give me a second. So you're writing out that we'll remove the first whereas. That's an amendment. I'll get you to respond, and then I'm going to go to Councillor Sonnenberg.
Through the mayor to council.
I'm going to the, excuse me for that, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Your hand was up for the motion. I'm going to the amendment first. Go ahead.
With respect to the amendment, the only part of the entire resolution that staff take direction from is the part that starts with
That's right.
there it be resolved, so that if council's desirous, you could actually eliminate every single whereas.
Sure.
And it just have the last part of the resolution. If the discussion of urban in the whereas clauses is causing some concern for some councilors, you could simply do the last part minus the word, just the be it hereby resolved part, and staff can take their direction from that.
It's been moved by Councillor Guys and seconded by Councillor Columbus that the first whereas be deleted from the motion in its entirety. That's the amendment. Unless they're asked it removed, I'm going to recognize that. And now I'm going to ask for those that wish to speak to the amendment. I have Councillor Sonnenberg first to the amendment, to the removal only.
Mr. Mayor, this whole resolution, to me, has become redundant. Ms. Robinson has offered to deal with the situation that's the issue here, repair the roads. What Councillor Black is asking for is just a repetition of what she's already offered to do. So I don't see the point of this resolution at all. Thank you.
Councillor Brunton, did you wish to speak to the amendment? I'll get back to you on the motion, but I want to deal with the amendment first because that's procedure. Anyone else wishes to speak to the amendment? Councillor Black, to the amendment.
Yeah, it's amazing how one's intent on trying to do something for the best interest of the collective whole kind of gets twisted around. And all it is an explanation of where I'm coming from. That's it. It explains, here's my rationale for coming up with the resolution at the bottom. So without it, how would you know what my thoughts are? I mean, yes, I can verbalize them, but sometimes it's, as a learning experience, some people learn better by reading rather than the visual versus auditory. It's good for the general public to understand, where an individual is coming from by way of an explanation. So, and we're just hearing tonight about our general manager's intent, which I had no idea. So why not formalize it in direction from this council? So the amendment is neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to support it. Doesn't make any difference.
You have the right to support it or to vote against it, that's for sure. To the amendment still, Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Mayor, should the amendment not pass, then I'm going to put a further amendment to add Cortland to the list, because I think it is unique amongst the hamlets as having water infrastructure in the street. So in that sense, would be similar.
Anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? And that is that the first whereas be deleted from the motion in its entirety. Any other comments on the amendment? If not, I will call the question. Those in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried. Sorry, that's defeated. My apologies. So we're going to go back to the motion as presented. And speaking to the motion, I have Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm starting to look at this, and I think Lee's got a good handle on what everybody wants. And I don't think we need, I agree with Councillor Sonnenberg somewhat, we don't need the thing now. I'd like to say something here, and it deals with the whole issue, if I may. And it's, 2 years ago, I stood here and I said, let's add money to the surface treatment program. And you know something? Everybody around this table, I assume, except Ward 5, probably benefited from that type of expansion. And I didn't do it because I thought we would get something out of it in Ward 5. I didn't do it that way. I thought it was a benefit to everybody to spend our dollars more wisely. That's the reason I said it. And I think what we're saying now is, let's look at more surface work. And I think, Councillor Black, you really like to see more in the urbaner type areas. And I think Lee has expressed that. She's going to look at that. I don't think we need to spell out Cortland or Simcoe or anybody. I just think we need to look at, let's focus more on paving and get out of the underground. That's my thought on it. And if I may say something else, Your Worship, you know, the town of Simcoe was built with the Local Improvement Act. And you will recall Sobeys, behind Sobeys, what a mess that area used to be. People bought homes in that area that were flooded, didn't have water and sewer at the time, no curb and gutter, no anything. But they bought those homes because they were priced in a certain way. We went in and did everything under local improvement. Curbs, sidewalk, or no sidewalk, sorry. I guess there was some sidewalk in there, a little bit by the Westland School and so forth. Water and sewer, all done under local improvement. And the people paid for that, and it upgraded the value of their homes at the time. The value of their homes, we figured, increased $10,000 to $15,000 because they had all the amenities. And we continued on. We did all kinds of local improvement. When I got on this council, the first thing I noticed is we're trying to do that in every place in the whole Norfolk County. And that's exactly why our roads reserve fund is in the negative by millions of dollars, because we try to do everything to meet what we had in Simcoe. And I'm not saying you can't have it, but it costs money. It costs us all money. And that's why we're in the mess we're in today with our reserve funds. So I'm in favor of getting some more pavement work done. If it's going to be cheaper in the next couple of years, I don't know what Trump did today with Iran, but maybe oil's up to $100 already, so we'll find out.
Councillor Columbus, I had recognized your hand as well.
Yes, thank you.
Back on the motion without the word urban.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm pleased to hear Lee Robinson's comments with respect to extending the dollars for more surface repair. And I know it was quite a while ago where we went on a tour and looked at some of the roads in the Delhi community, which you, Mr. Mayor, are very familiar with as well that are in drastic need of cosmetic repair. And this would eliminate a lot of pothole. I mean, you see the guys out there regularly filling potholes. Next week, they're filling the same pothole. So this would eliminate that pothole problem, I would think. But I wanted to ask Lee about, we've got a connecting link project in Delhi to King Street. Would moving away from these major capital projects, this would not harm the King Street redevelopment project, I would think?
Through the mayor to council, no, this would not be affected. This would not affect the King Street Rehabilitation Program.
Thank you.
Okay. I think everyone is aware of what the motion says. Just took the word urban out, where it says therefore be it resolved. Any final discussion? Oh, yes. I still have you on the list. Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Mayor, we have had a good discussion, and I appreciate where Councillor Black was coming from, that all of his whereases were just preamble and put in context the important part of the motion at the end. But I also appreciated Councillor Geisen's reminding us that the hamlet of Cortland does in fact have infrastructure beneath the streets. So I support the concept, and I will move an amendment, Mr. Mayor, that we add in that first paragraph Cortland to that list of urban centers with infrastructure beneath the streets. We don't have how many kilometers. Staff can fill that blank in for us once they get it. That would be an amendment, friendly or otherwise. Friendly?
Councillor Black, friendly,
Okay.
fine?
A friendly amendment?
Because the
I'm
original
fine with
motion-
putting Cortland in there.
Thank you. So you are the mover, and certainly Councillor Oliver is the seconder, so we'll put Cortland into the, whereas, so we have all of our urban areas with Sue in here, and I think, I think that's important. Okay, so I'm ready to call the question unless there's any further debate on the motion. Those in favor?